Look, I got the entire board on camera tonight. And most of the other pieces as well. I had my doubts, but success is success, so hopefully everyone can see well enough. I mean, this top-down view doesn't give a lot of detail about which character's which, but I think you can generally get the idea at least. What we can do is put these rings on each of the bad guys. Maybe that'll make it easier to tell who's who. The ones with the black borders around the bottom are going to be the three main enemy characters here. Just like last time, we've got Skeletor, Evelyn, and Triclops as our main three on the board against He-Man, Duncan, Teela, and Stratos. And this time, I've got everything actually set up. I've got all of the appropriate AI pieces in place. I've read the rules 2 more times, and I am feeling significantly better about how this one's going to go tonight, hopefully. A couple things that have changed from last time, now that I am older and wiser about the game, is that the Shadow Beasts don't go on the board for the initial setup. Those are elite minions, so only the hover robots are going to be on the board starting out, and some of the enemy strategies may call for bringing in one of the elite minions. So if it does, we will be putting Shadow Beasts into play, but until then, we have 6 hover robots on the board. So they're going to be the gray figures that don't have the black circles around the base. I know the black circles are a little hard to see, but those 3 characters all the way up to the north are the main enemies. Our 4 characters down here, I have them in order of Stratos, He-Man, Duncan, and Teela. So should probably go ahead and rearrange these so that they're, I guess it really doesn't matter. Those have no influence. So remember, we have no skills starting out because on the escalation track, we're starting with the player and the AI. Well, escalation is for both of them. The player and AI tokens here are for victory points. So we gain victory points throughout the game, and we're shooting for 5 victory points first as the win criteria. The Sword of Power here is the escalation track marker, and it goes here to track progress along that escalation track. So as we get to level 1 green, we'll select a green skill for each of our characters using their skill cards. These are double-sided, so we'll be choosing one of the 2 for each level: green, yellow, and red. And last time we had chatted about the He-Man with Battle Cat figure, and that's actually He-Man's level 5 activation skill. So at level 5, if we want, we can choose the Battle Cat skill and swap his character miniature out for the Battle Cat with He-Man miniature and increase his movement and his reactions. So that's how that goes. Now, some things that I didn't quite have straight and ready last time are the 2 AI decks that I've got out tonight. So the decks consist of character activations, and these get flipped every time one of the 3 enemy cards is revealed in the on the controller board here. And then the enemy's AI strategy activation deck as well, which will be revealed every time the strategy card comes up on the controller track. So that means we've got our 4 character cards, being 3 characters and the strategy, and we've got 4 hero cards. And again, because I haven't really done much with strategy in this game yet, we'll go ahead and randomize those, but those are what's going to make up the controller track for each round, and the 8 of them will activate in turn. So remember last time we talked about the energy cubes, or power cubes, whatever they wanted to call those, you know, these things, and how they were going to be assigned. Well, for the AI mode on the skill board here, we have 4 generic skills that are available, and at the top we have 3 spaces for skills for our 3 bad guy characters. So those skill assignments, or power assignments, are going to go Skeletor, Evelyn, Triclops. And those are used to activate their special abilities on their card when that character activation card from the deck says to use one of them. So that's basically how a round's going to go. On the activation phase, so each round goes in 2 phases. There's going to be the order phase, where we lay the cards out on the controller board, and then the activation phase, where we work our way down the controller board, activating each of the different characters as they turn up. And the minions get to move every time we flip the strategy activation card. So every round the minion figures are going to move. They move 1 space and they try to move toward the closest hero character and perform an attack. So that's going to be their standard action. And other than that, there's not much different than what we did last time. So I think that we are pretty much ready to go. One other thing that I forgot to mention is in the AI rules, anytime the heroes spend or lose any energy, power, it goes to the enemy to be allocated into their pool. So enemy benefits from us using our abilities by gaining power to activate their own abilities. So that's one of the ways the game works against us. But by default, the rules also say that anytime a choice has to be made, make the choice that's worst for the player. So they kind of want us to have to struggle, but that's what we're up against here. So like last time, I set up the scenario that we were going to play through, which was the Mountain Brawl. So there are 3 different control points that capturing control points can give us victory points. We We can also gain victory points by knocking out enemy characters, and the escalation track will advance one space either whenever a character is knocked out or at the end of each round. So by the end of round 5 at the very latest, we'll be up to the full activation. Full escalation. So it's just a first to 5 enemies or heroes, and we will see how it goes. So also these special skills here, command, reserves, empower, battle plan, they also level up during escalation. So instead of gaining new skills, the enemy AI skills get empowered. There's an empowered side to each card that improves and increases the benefits and abilities that they do. And that's what happens during the escalation phase. So, for those of you that were watching on, well, I guess the Wednesday stream this week, like I said, the She-Ra and Horde expansions are just new characters, so they don't have like their own Etheria type scenarios. So if we were to play those, it would just be a matter of swapping out miniatures. So maybe if we play this again down the line, we'll play it with She-Ra set, because once I go through everything at least once, I'll probably end up revisiting these as a better player with a little more experience and trying each of them again. But yeah. Oh, a couple other things. The attacks in the game, there are melee and ranged attacks. So we'll be rolling these dice for them. And when we do, each sword icon is a successful melee attack. Each bullseye icon is a successful ranged attack. And each gray skull icon is a successful attack of either kind that also rewards additional energy when it's rolled. So those are what we're going to be rolling for attacks as we go. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so, and melee attacks, I think last time I said they, not melee, but ranged attacks, I think last time I said they're, have a range of up to 3 spaces, but they actually have a range of up to 4 spaces. So, that's how that's going to work out. So let's see what happens. First off, we got to shuffle up our decks of characters and put them on the controller board. AI goes in the 4 controller spaces here. And then we'll do the same with the heroes. And they go in the player spaces here. Alright, so we begin by flipping the first card on the controller board for the activation phase. And that card is Evelyn. So for Evelyn, we're going to draw a character activation card, see what it has to say. It says if there's an enemy in attack range, which there's not, so because we can't satisfy the first condition on the character activation card, we move to the second condition. So the second condition is character moves 4 spaces toward the closest enemy, stopping if they enter attack range. Because Evelyn has a dark magic as her basic attack with 4 die, and it's a 4 die ranged attack. So she stops when she gets within 4 spaces of another character in order to use that attack. So Evelyn will go 1, 2, 3, 4 to work her way down the board. Next up is a hero. And this hero is Stratos. So Stratos has no energy, but because of the lightning bolt above the space of the card that above the space that he was in on the board, he gains 1 energy. So right now I have no skills, so we'll just allocate it to Stratos himself. The one thing I do need to double check on is how far they move. I think they can move 3 spaces. When a character performs a move action, they're moved up to 3 spaces in the battlefield, blah, blah, blah. It takes an extra movement to get up onto terrain, like the rocks, though. So they can move through spaces containing allies, but never through enemy spaces or terrain. So, yeah. And then if we move out of a space adjacent to an enemy, we take potentially escape damage. So they basically get a free attack. Kind of a D&D rule for those of you that have ever done tabletop gaming. So you can take up to 2 actions. Move is one of them. I guess I should have just read them off while I was there, right? So you can do your move action, you can do an attack, you can interact, you can use a skill, and you can do a bonus action if the skill gives you one. Because sometimes the skills have in their activation text something about it requiring an action to do. Other things like capturing one of the points on the board here in this particular scenario also require an action. So a handful of things that we're going to actually be using interact actions to perform. But for now, we'll just move Stratos because he can't really do anything else. He does have both a melee and a ranged attack, both at 3 die. So that's fairly cartoon accurate with him having his blaster gauntlets. And then for the expense of various levels of energy, he has some movement boosts he can do too. But we're not worried about those right now. We're just going to 3, and then for his second action, go ahead and take another 3 movement. I know that puts him in a dangerous spot facing off against one of the hover robots, but it also puts him in an advantageous spot in order to be able to attack at the beginning of next round. So moving on, we have Triclops. Triclops has a single lightning bolt above his character, so we'll allocate 1 power to him on the board here. Draw a character activation card for him. And the card says before taking their first action, the character gains 3 power. So we'll give him another 3 power. And then it says if the character has enough energy to activate their skill and there's an enemy in range, which there's not, so we'll move along. Second one says if there's an enemy in attack range, which there's not, so we'll move along. Otherwise, character moves 2 spaces toward the closest enemy, stopping if they enter attack range. So Triclops has, for his basic attack, Sword Mastery, which is a melee attack, but he does have his Ultra Vision Blast as a special skill that can be used as a ranged attack. So for now, we're we're just going to move him 2 spaces up the board. Then we're going to move to the next character, who is Duncan, Man-at-Arms. So for Duncan, he has a ranged attack. It's a 3-die ranged attack. He gets 2 energy for his activation. So for him, we can go 1, 2, 3 for movement, and then that gives me line of sight here to this hover robot. And because ranged attacks are within 4 spaces, I am close enough to make an attack on him. Hover robots only have a single hit point, but they do have 1 armor also, so I'm going to need 2 hits to be able to take him out. So because Duncan's ranged attack is his laser rifle, I can go ahead and roll these 3 die. Hey, look at that dice tower, works pretty well, huh? And I got 1 melee success and 1 gray skull die. So that's 2 damage, enough to take out that hover robot. And because I rolled a gray skull die, it also means that I get an energy for the successful attack. So Duncan will gain a 3rd energy. If there had been multiple enemies in range and I had line of sight on him, Duncan does have a special ability called Rapid Fire. So for 2 energy, he gets to take a bonus laser rifle attack. And I'm going to really love Duncan because he's also got, for a single energy, a special skill that allows him to reroll attack die. Which, me being me, probably going to need that. So, next up we have Skeletor. So for Skeletor's character activation, he gets 2 power. So we'll power up Skeletor with 2 power. Right, it says if there's an enemy in attack range, which there's not, so otherwise move character 2 spaces toward the closest enemy. So 2 spaces. Also for his attacks, Skeletor has a 4-die melee attack with a couple special abilities. And for the hover robots, they have a 2-die melee attack. But they get additional die to be able to roll for every gray skull that comes up. Alright, so that's Skeletor. Next up we have He-Man. So for He-Man, we have a melee attack, obviously, with the Sword of Power. So it's a 3-die melee attack, but he's got an attack boost that gives him 3 additional die, and his Indomitable ability gives him self-healing. Remember that hit points are tracked here on this board, so everybody's icon right now is in its max HP position, so they're at starting HP. So they will move down the board as they take damage. So besides his melee attack, because there are rocks on the board, boulders on the board, if you'll recall last time, if you're adjacent to a boulder, you can actually do a boulder ranged attack by throwing it at an enemy. So right now they block line of sight, but you can spend 1 power and 1 action to remove an adjacent boulder. And if you do, then they can perform a ranged attack, which is a 4-die ranged attack. And it also causes daze. So if you hit an enemy character with a boulder, they become dazed. And I know they get a token for being dazed, but I don't remember what dazed does. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Alright, so He-Man is going to go ahead and move one space, and then now I have line of sight on that hover robot that's right in front of Stratos. So I think I'll go ahead and... Oh wait, I forgot to give He-Man his 2 energy for activating. I'll use one of those energy that we just got for his activation phase, and I will use his second action to remove the boulder and use it as a projectile against that hover robot. So, becomes a 4-die ranged attack. And on that one, I got 2 ranged successes, which is enough to both defeat the hover robot's armor and do 1 hit point of damage. So that hover robot's gone and no longer a threat to Stratos. And that's the end of He-Man's turn. So next up is strategy activation for the bad guys. So when you activate strategy for the bad guys, the energy that they consume there... Oh, 1 energy. I forgot. I spent an energy with He-Man. So the bad guys actually gain that energy because of the AI play. The other 2 energy they get for this being their activation phase goes into the energy pool, meaning it can be allocated wherever the controller wants amongst those skills at the bottom of their board. Hey game dude, how's it going? So next up in the strategy activation, well, we'll do the move. So each AI in strategy activation makes 1 move and attacks if close enough. So we'll move each of the minions 1 spot. There are no attacks because all they have is melee. So next we'll draw and activate a strategy card. So the strategy card in this instance, again, have multiple conditions based on how much power and how whether or not they're able to do any of these actions. So the first one says controller pays 5 energy. We don't have 5 energy from the controller. Second one says controller pays 3 energy. We don't have 3 energy from the controller. And the last one says player character with the lowest remaining HP becomes dazed and then suffers a 3 melee attack. So my character with the lowest HP is Duncan. Oddly enough, you'd think Man-at-Arms would have more HP than a lot of people, but I guess because he's armored, he doesn't. And like I said, we'd cross the Dazed bridge when we got to it, so let's go ahead and see exactly what Dazed does, because it is definitely one that I do not remember. Watch, it's also going to be one that I just can't find. It wasn't in the glossary, which is no good, but dazed. Well, may have to check the errata online because Yeah, I don't see it in here anywhere. Interesting. No wonder I couldn't remember what it did. Well, that makes me feel better. I'm not just dumb. I am actively unable to find the dazed conditions in the book. So, well, that being the case, I guess for this particular game, we'll ignore it because I'll have to do some more research. Hopefully it's online somewhere because they've got tokens for it and they've got mention of it in the cards, and I just can't find it for now. So that's great. It is what it is. But the last part about that strategy was Duncan gets hit with a 3-die melee attack. Dazed cancels out the armor. Did you look it up, Slinky? If so, I appreciate that. So if that's the case, cool. Duncan normally has 1 armor. So with 1 dazed token, I guess we treat it as 0 armor and we roll against him. Alright, cool. Good to know. I guess I wasn't the only one that couldn't find it in the book, huh? Oh. Of course, when I roll for the enemy, I get 3 successful melee attacks. So, 1, 2, 3. Duncan lost half of his HP in 1 shot. So, yeah. Good on me. But, oh, cool. Good to know. Thanks, I appreciate you looking that up. I didn't want to sit here trying to spend several minutes figuring it out while you all watched me randomly sift through the instruction manual or Google, so I appreciate it. So moving on, we have Tila. She gets 3 energy for her activation. Her ability is a melee attack with a 3-die melee attack. She also has special abilities of Captain of the Guard, which she can either spawn a Royal Guard minion in an adjacent space, or activate all Royal Guard elite minions within 4 spaces. So she can have a sidekick. But for now, we will just move her to deal with that minion on the next turn. And that means end of round 1. So because it's end of round 1, in this scenario, we increase the escalation by 1 spot. And we therefore get to assign skill cards to each of our 4 heroes. So the skills available to He-Man are Throw, which is a 3-die melee attack, which pushes enemies backwards 2 spaces, and gives him an attack boost skill. So if an enemy ends up adjacent to another enemy, they perform a 3-die ranged attack. So basically it allows He-Man to throw bad guys and use them as projectiles against other bad guys. Or we can choose the charge skill, which lets him perform an extra move action and attack action. Or, so basically using a regular one of his single actions as a combination move and attack. Or has the ability to do a surge, which means he can re-roll his die. But let's be honest, the most He-Man of those He-Man skills is throwing one bad guy at another one and using them as a projectile weapon, right? So we kind of have to go with that one, I think. Let me know if you disagree, but for now, that's what we're doing, is throw. So for Duncan's options, we have tactical reposition, so he can spend an energy to push Man-at-Arms or one ally within 4 spaces up to 3 spaces away. And for 1 energy surge, which means he may ignore terrain penalties and move through enemies during this push. Or he's got one that's called Overwatch, and for 2 energy he can use that as a reaction skill, which means he can use it as he's getting attacked. When an enemy ends a move action or performs an attack within 4 spaces at Man-at-Arms, perform 1 attack on that enemy before they attack. So that one, I think, sounds the most Man-at-Arms out of the 2, so we'll go with that. For Stratos, we have a choice between an attack boost to boost his melee attack with 1 die and apply daze against enemies, or he can boost his ranged attack, which allows him to roll 1 die and hit all enemies adjacent to the one he's shooting at. Alternatively, he can have Rocket Rush, where he rolls 1 die for every space he's moved during the activation as an attack. So he can move up to an enemy, and if he moved 4 spaces, he can spend the energy to use 4 die for a melee attack. And he can do an attack boost, so after this attack, push Stratos into the enemy space and push the enemy 1 space away. But I think his attack boost options are the best, so we'll go with those. And for Tila, we can choose between Rallying, meaning Tila may use this boost on herself or any ally within 4 spaces. And what it does is for each wound that whoever she uses the skill on, for each wound they inflict, they heal 1 damage. Or we can select Whirlwind, which is a 3 die melee attack. This attack may be used on enemies up to 2 spaces away and hits all enemies within 2 spaces of Tila. So all enemies within 2 spaces can be pushed 1 space away. So I like the Whirlwind attack, but I also like that we can have a healing skill, because we don't have any other healing skills except for He-Man's self-heal. So on that one, I don't know, what do you guys think? I would think maybe the healing skill, even though the other skill, the Whirlwind attack, seems more Tila-ish, if we were sticking with the mythology. I don't know, what do you all think out there? Daze tokens moved along with the model until they recover from it. Oh, so they have to use power to recover from it. Okay, well, good to know. Thanks, Linky. Again. For now, I'm going to choose her healing skill, because we don't have any other ways to heal as far as I know. So we'll choose that one, and then we will set up the controller board for round 2. So, 4 controller cards. Oh, you know what? I forgot something. You know, on their turn, the AI actually gets... Oh, okay, cool. On their turn, the AI is actually supposed to get 2 of their strategy cards to be resolved. So their second strategy card says, this card remains in play until the next controller activation. Do not reshuffle the controller deck until the start of the next controller activation. The controller can either pay 2 energy while this card's in play. All AI characters attack, gain 1 attack die. Doesn't matter anyway. The only thing that matters for it is the last condition on it says all enemy characters heal 1 and get 1 additional power. But that is that's it. So now we can move on to the next round. All right. Let's start out right off the bat with a strategy activation. So each minion moves 1 space. This one can't move, so instead he just attacks Tila with his Whirling Blades, which is a 2-die melee attack. And he misses with both, because I rolled 2 range successes for him. So, no problem. Tila remains unscathed. So for the strategy activation, controller pays 5 energy, which they don't have. Controller pays 3 energy, which they don't have. Controller pays 2 energy, which they don't have. Otherwise, spawn 1 minion on each spawn point, then spawn 1 minion adjacent to the player character with the lowest HP. Immediately activate that minion. So, I don't know what they consider a spawn point, because in this particular scenario, they don't have anything specifically labeled as spawn points. So unless the game means any point that a minion is shown to be at, let's see. When an enemy is spawned, it's placed on the battlefield. Each effect that spawns instructs where or how. So it says each spawn point, but well, there are 6 of them, and if we don't even have the enough of the miniatures to spawn them, because there's only 8 of them. So I don't know what spawn points are either. I guess these rules need a little bit of clarification, because anyway, so instead of just using a spawn point, we will go ahead and spawn one next to the character with the lowest HP. Immediately activate the minion, which means he gets to do his 2-die melee attack against Duncan. He got 1 success, but Duncan has 1 armor. So this particular one gets to activate immediately, Slinky, because the strategy card said that as one of the criteria. When a minion is spawned, it can be placed in any unoccupied space adjacent to the edge of the battlefield or adjacent to a controller character. Alright, so, but that doesn't necessarily clarify spawn points. I would think spawn points would be set locations on the game board, so otherwise that'd be a lot of spawning in. So I don't know exactly what that would need for clarification, but for right now we'll just treat it as the one that spawned next to Duncan, and I'll look up the clarification for a future playthrough. Sound good? Alright, next up, Tila. So, for Tila's first, well, she gets her energy, so we'll allocate an energy to her rally ability. And we will attack that hover robot hanging out next to us. Tila's got her 3 die melee attack. And hey, look at that. I rolled 3 melee successes. So that minion is defeated. And then for Tila's second action, I will use a move, and I will go up onto the rocks so that next turn I can capture that control point and start gaining some victory points here. Sound good? What was the other escalation criteria besides KO? Let's see. At the end of every round. That's right. Okay. And then claiming an objective is worth 3 energy and a victory point. So that's cool. So next round may be our first victory point. Next up we have Skeletor. For his character activation, before taking their first action, character heals 2, but he's not wounded, so no need. If there is an enemy in attack range, which there is not because Skeletor has a melee attack, otherwise character moves 2 spaces toward the closest enemy, stopping when they get into attack range. Again, just moving him down the board. Oh, I never took He-Man's second action last turn. Oh wait, yeah I did. I moved him 1 space, didn't I? Never mind. Alright, Stratos' turn. So, for Stratos' turn, we will... You know what? He doesn't have line of sight on Evelyn, so I can either take an attack against that hover robot that's right in front of him, because here's Stratos, right? Here's the hover robot, here's Evelyn. I can either take an attack against the hover robot that's right in front of him, or I can use a move action to move past that hover robot and then take an attack directly against Evelyn from behind. I am kind of inclined to attack Evelyn because she's more of a threat than the hover robot. So let's go ahead and try that. We're going to use our first move, our first action with Stratos, 1, 2, 3, to move. We'll move over here. He gets 2 energy for his activation, so I'll use it for his improved gauntlets. And then we will spend 1 of his energy, which means it goes to the enemy board, to use his ranged attack boost from his empowered gauntlets. So what that says is, oops, wrong direction. What that says is to roll +1 die and then hit all enemies adjacent to the enemy. So that's going to let me attack Evelyn, but also potentially hit that hover robot at the same time. So here goes nothing. Alright, well, we got 1 single damage. The hover robot's got 1 armor, so it survived from that spill damage, but Evelyn at least did take 1 damage herself. And now it's Triclops' turn. Triclops gains 2 energy. Oops, he's already maxed out on energy, so he can't gain any more. So he, if the character has enough energy to activate their skill and an enemy is in range, His skill is the Disc Division Blast, so target the closest enemy regardless of range or line of sight. Triclops performs a 6-die attack on them. But he's behind rocks, which means his line of sight is blocked. That's probably good. He could have done a lot of damage to Stratos on that one. So next, if there's an enemy in attack range, which there's not, so otherwise move 2 spaces toward the closest enemy, stopping if they enter attack range. So the one thing that I'm curious about, and I'm going to go ahead and as a house rule say that it doesn't impact them, is when it says move 2 spaces, if they move onto terrain like rocks or something, does that count as both spaces? Because a hero has to use 2 spaces worth of move action to cross onto other terrain. I'm going to say that for the strategy activations it doesn't, and the enemy characters can move unimpeded across terrain. That's just my thought. So that means 1-2 puts him in range of Stratos. Alright. Moving on. He-Man's turn. So, He-Man being He-Man, let's give him the 2 power he gets for his activation. But then we're going to 1, 2, 3 and spend 1 power to again throw a boulder, and this time we're going to throw it at Skeletor here because that sounds like something He-Man would do. So I'll spend 1 power that goes to the enemy, and I will do a 4-die ranged attack against Skeletor to see if we can take him out. Well, not take him out, but you know, beat him up a little bit at least. So 4-die ranged attack against Skeletor. Wow, that sucks. I got 4 successes, but they were all melee, so nothing. Skeletor's just fine. That boulder sailed straight past his head. And no, 10, I'm not even going to try the Skeletor impression. That would be awful. I'm terrible with those. I'll let you do it in text, though. There you go. Evelyn's turn. 2 energy to Evelyn for activation. Character activation says, before taking their first action, character gains 3 energy. So that maxes out Evelyn's energy. If there is an enemy in attack range, character performs 1 attack on the enemy in range with the lowest HP. So that means that Evelyn's going to use her dark magic attack, but the rules for AI characters say whenever possible and whenever available they use an attack boost, so she's going to spend an energy to use an attack boost, which means for each wound dealt the enemy loses an energy, and for each energy they can't lose they suffer an additional wound. So she's got 4 ranged attack, and we're going to do 4 ranged attack against Stratos. And she got 3 hits, 2 ranged attack hits and a gray skull die. So she gained, so she does her 3 damage against Stratos, and for each damage she takes away 1 of his energy. And for each energy she can't take away, which because Stratos only had 2 energy, she does an additional damage. So Stratos took 4 damage on that. So fortunately Stratos was one of the tougher characters I had on board and had 8 hit points, but still don't want to keep doing that, you know? So last but not least, we should have Duncan, which we do, and he's going to, as he's right here, attack the hover bot next to him. So he's got a 3-die melee ranged attack. Which 1 success ranged attack and 1 successful gray skull attack, which means he gains an energy, and that's enough to defeat the hoverbot. So, and then for Duncan's second action, I will go ahead and use it to get rid of his dazed marker. Yeah, that is true. She definitely clips Stratos' wings. Seems very cartoon appropriate though, Evelyn generally being the most competent of the villains out there. So anyway, that's the end of round 2. We're going to escalate. So we're at 2 for the escalation level, and we're going to reset the controller board and move into round 3. What's everybody think of the game so far? I think it's pretty fun. There's a lot of interesting strategy to it that can be had, especially with the various terrain features. I'd be interested to play the different scenarios with some of the other obstacles that come with them. There are things like poisonous plants and different bogs and stuff. So, what did chat change? You didn't type Faceland? Yeah, the rules could use some revision, that's for sure, but I mean, a lot of games seem to have supplemental stuff online for the rules because yeah, that's just kind of how it is. But yeah, playtesters probably should have caught those missing pieces of the rules in the book. All right, beginning of round 4. Or 3, I guess. Starting out with Triclops. Triclops, character moves 2 spaces toward the closest enemy, stopping when they enter attack range. Spawn 2 minions adjacent to this character. They immediately activate. So, Stratos is effectively surrounded. Alright, so each minion immediately activates. They get their 2-die melee attacks against Stratos. So there's 1 successful hit on Stratos, and second minion also 1 successful hit on Stratos. So Stratos is down to 2 hit points. That's not great, but what am I going to do, right? So it also says to flip another action card for this character, but only resolve it 1 time. So flip another action card if the character has enough energy to activate their skill and there's an enemy in range. Select so activate their skill. So I have a feeling Stratos is done this turn because that activation means that Triclops gets to take a 6-die Division Blast against Stratos. So That one's probably not going to end well for Birdman. Three. Yep. 3 ranged successes against Stratos' 2 remaining hit points. So, Stratos has been KO'd, which escalates the game, which removes him from the board, and which gives the AI a victory point. And because we escalated into the yellow level at level 3, we get to choose yellow skills for each character, because that immediately takes place once they hit the appropriate escalation level. So for He-Man, we can choose either deflect, so roll 3 dice for each melee success, gain 1 armor. For each Gray Skull, gain 1 armor and the attacker suffers 1 wound. Or Earth Shatter, which is a 4-die melee attack, target 1 space within 2 spaces of He-Man. This attack hits all enemies in a line between He-Man and the targeted space. He also gets an attack boost, target a space within 4 spaces instead, or an attack boost that not only hits enemies but dazes them. Personally, I think deflect is the better option there, because He-Man should be a lot harder to hurt than anybody else in the game. So I'm going to go with deflect. For Man-at-Arms, there's either Stun Beam, which is a 3-die ranged attack. For each success, the enemy also loses 1 energy. For each energy they can't lose, they suffer a wound. So basically the same thing as Evil Lynn's Dark Magic. And it gives them an attack boost that says enemies wounded by this attack become dazed. Or we can choose Grenade, which is a 4-die ranged attack. Target 1 space within 4 spaces of Man-at-Arm. This attack hits all enemies within 2 spaces of the targeted space. And he gains an attack boost after the attack. Push all enemies up to 2 spaces. Obviously, we're going to go with Grenade for Man-at-Arms. For Birdman, we will not bother because he's out of there. And for... Here, let's do this so you can actually see the He-Man card now. And for Teela, we have the choice of defensive stance, which for each miss, the attacker suffers a wound, or a bonus action of flip this skill over. And, doesn't matter, because Teela's skill card, all we have to do is spend 1 energy as a bonus action, and we can turn it from defensive stance to offensive stance as we want. So, yeah, that works out. The offensive stance gives her +1 die on her attack, and the defensive stance gives her +1 armor. So, I don't think she's going to get a chance to attack this turn. Let's start out with defensive stance. Alright, and that's it. Now we're done with that round. With Triclops' turn. So, Man-at-Arms. For Man-at-Arms' first action, we will go ahead and move him. And for his second action, we will... here's the energy that he should have gotten for activation. So for his second action, let's go ahead and try out that new grenade that he got, huh? So we'll spend 1 energy, and it's a 4-die ranged attack, and the attack hits all enemies within 2 spaces of the targeted space. So the targeted space is going to be Skeletor, and potentially we're going to take out that Hoverbot at the same time. So 4-die ranged attack. And we got 2 successes, one of which was a Castle Grayskull, so he immediately gains 1 power. 2 successes means 2 damage to that hoverbot, KOing him, and 2 damage to Skeletor, who has no armor, knocking him down to 6 HP. Yeah, that's why we left Orko out of this round, remember? Orko doesn't get to play this time around. So, cool, we damaged Skeletor. That's a bonus. Strategy activation. So, each minion moves 1 space toward the closest enemy. We'll move him that way. There we go. Strategy card says each player character loses 1 energy to go to the controller pool. So 1, 1, 1 to the controller pool. Flip another AI strategy activation card. Okay, so the controller pays 3 energy. The AI character with the most energy takes 1 action. So 1, 2, 3 energy. Character with the most energy, which is a tie between Evil Lyn and Triclops. So, I don't know. We'll say melee is Triclops, ranged is Evil Lyn. Melee. So Triclops. Triclops takes 1 action, so his action is going to be if there is an enemy in attack range, but there's not, otherwise move 2 spaces, so 1, 2. And continue to the next effect. The controller pays 3 energy. 1, 2, 3. The AI character with the most energy takes 1 action, so Evil Lyn gets to take an action. If there's an enemy in attack range, which there's not, otherwise move 2 spaces. 1, 2. Continue to the next effect. We don't have... Oh, controller pays 2 energy. The AI character with the most energy moves 2 spaces toward the closest player character. So should I be moving the same enemy every time? Because it keeps saying energy with the AI character with the most energy. I bet I probably should have been using the same character every time, huh? Okay, well, let's use the same character every time. 1, 2, 1, 2. That puts Triclops now in attack range of everybody. And the last criteria on the card says the AI character with the lowest remaining HP heals 2 and gains 2 energy, so that's Evil Lyn. She heals back up to max and gains 2 energy, which she's already maxed out on. So now I gotta shuffle up the character and the strategy activation decks, because in their activation round, the enemy activates a second strategy card. Yeah, I don't know, Ten. That's a good question. CMON, I don't know if you guys remember Marvel United. That was a CMON game too, and there were a couple things in there that I had to question about the rules too. So maybe their playtesters just don't catch a lot of that stuff, or have enough access to the developers that or game designers that they don't care. But yeah. Alright, second strategy activation card. Each player character loses 1 energy, goes in the controller pool. If they cannot, they suffer 1 wound and become dazed. So 1 energy, 1 energy. He-Man can't lose an energy, so he suffers 1 wound and becomes dazed. And flip another AI strategy activation card. This card remains in play until the next controller action. So the controller pays 2 energy, which he doesn't have. Controller pays 2 energy, doesn't have. Otherwise, all AI characters heal 1 and gain 1 energy. So that means Skeletor heals 1, and they all gain 1 energy. And fortunately, now they're done. So, moving on. Oh, Stratos. Yeah, you're out of there. Skeletor. Alright, Skeletor. Let's see what you're doing. If there's an enemy in attack range, which Skeletor has a 4-die melee attack, so no, there's not. Otherwise, move 2 spaces toward the closest enemy. 1, 2. So for KO'd characters, I actually just remembered, I believe that they reactivate on the first round after they've been KO'd. So let me just double check that real quick. Because that would mean that Birdman does get to come back into the game. When a model is reduced to 0, it's KO'd and removed from the battlefield. Oh, never mind. Oh yeah, when a character is KO'd, they're only temporarily out of the fight. If characters KO'd during their next activation, they're placed on any friendly spawn token. Then they perform their activation as usual. So he does come back on the next turn. Meaning, you should pick his yellow skill. He's got the choice between evasive maneuvers, which gives him +1 armor, and as a reaction, he can push up to 2 spaces, and he can flip the skill. So just like Tila, his is changeable. So he can either perform an evasive maneuver or he can carry an ally. So those are his 2 options. So let's give him evasive maneuver to start. He can go ahead and have his card back in the lineup so that he can come back in at the start of his next turn. Or our next round, as it were. He-Man's turn. So, for He-Man, we give him his 2 energy. Oh, sorry, Skeletor, there's your energy from last turn. He-Man gets 2 energy. And let's just go ahead and, use his throw ability. So push enemies wounded by this attack up to 2 spaces. Oh, never mind, I only have a single energy for that. I'm about to lose one of the cameras. Yep, sorry, just lost my dice view. So, I'll have to move the dice tower so that maybe it's more visible. Nope, not quite. Oh well. Okay, so I don't want to use that one because actually if the enemy ends adjacent to another enemy, perform a 3 ranged attack on the adjacent enemy. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I will allocate both energies into throw, and then we will spend both of the throw energies to make a throw attack using Triclops to hit Skeletor. So the initial throw attack is a 3-die melee attack. And this one says, push enemies wounded by this attack up to 2 spaces. So I rolled 1 successful melee attack, which means 1 damage to Triclops, but it's enough to push him into Skeletor. And that means he acts as a 3-die ranged attack against Skeletor. So alright, for that one, I got 1 success because I've got 1 Gray Skull token. So I gain an energy and hit Skeletor for 1 damage. And there you go. That was a pretty successful attack. I like that ability because it definitely feels very He-Man-ish. So it's very much a cool aspect to this game that so many of the skills do really feel like they come straight from the cartoon and like something He-Man would be able to do. So that's really kind of cool. And then for his second action, I will go ahead and probably remove his dazed status just because. Meaning it is Evelyn's turn. So Evelyn, before taking their action, heals 2. She's already at max HP. If there's an enemy in attack range, which there isn't, so she moves 2 spaces toward the closest enemy. And last but not least is Teela. So for Teela, we will use 1 action to claim the space and gain a victory point. Let me just double check there's nothing else beneficial from gaining that. So it says claiming objective grants character, oh yeah, 3 energy. I forgot about the 3 energy. So she gets the 3 energy that I didn't give her for activating. And then she gets 3 more energy for claiming one of the objectives. So Teela claimed that one. And for her next action, I will go ahead and do a move action. Alright, and that ends this round. So escalate one more space on the escalation track. Oh, getting close to being able to grab that Battle Cat. Yeah, that would be cool, Tim, but she's not nearly close enough to flip over anybody quite yet. Got to get her a little more in range of one of the baddies. Alright, so beginning of this round, Stratos comes back into play on any of the spawn spots, so we'll put him there. Anybody remember if when I read that it said he comes back with full HP, or was that another thing it didn't clarify? During the next activation, they're placed on any friendly spawn token. They then perform their activation as usual. Doesn't say how many HP he comes back with. Just says he comes back on a spawn spot and activates. So house rules in typical Masters of the Universe fashion will say he comes back at full health, because it doesn't really clarify. So Stratos has 8 health. I'm just going to go ahead and give him a full health, because my house. Alright, let's start off with Skeletor. Before taking their first action, character gains 3 energy, which he already has. If there's an enemy in attack range, character performs 1 attack. So Skeletor's attack is a 4-die melee attack, but because the rules state whenever there's an attack boost available, they use the attack boost. He has 1 energy. Enemies wounded by this attack become dazed. And 2 energy. Heal 1 hit point for each wound dealt. So, he gets 4 melee die against Man-at-Arms, with a chance to daze him and heal himself. So 2 successful attacks. Man-at-Arms has 1 armor, so he'll take 1 damage. He becomes dazed, and Skeletor heals for 1 HP because of those 2 attack boosts. So Man-at-Arms is suffering a little as well. But now it's his turn. So for his first attack, well, let's give him the energy he gains. And we'll go ahead and, because he's got Skeletor and Triclops right next to each other, use a grenade attack again, which is 4 ranged die. And for that one we got 3 successes, 2 of which were Grayskull rolls, so that's cool. So that means that Triclops and Skeletor both take 2 damage. And for Man-at-Arms' second attack, or second action, why don't we go ahead and do another grenade attack? Endlessly throwing grenades sounds like something Duncan would do. So let's go ahead and take a second grenade attack against Triclops and Skeletor again. And this time I got 3 range successes, one of which was a Grayskull die. So 3 successes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Triclops and Skeletor are both pretty close to KO at this point. So nice work, Duncan. Next up, we have Triclops. Activation card says character moves 2 spaces toward the closest enemy, stopping after they enter attack range. Spawn 2 minions adjacent to this character. Immediately activate. Flip another action card. So we get 2 minions spawning in around Duncan. They immediately activate, so each one gets 2 die melee attacks against Duncan. That's 2 successes, so... oh crap, he's dazed. So he doesn't get his armor. And instead that hover robot just KO'd Duncan. Oh, alright. Works for me, Slinky. Thanks again. My house rule was correct. So, yay. So Duncan is KO'd. They gain 1 victory point, and Triclops activates again. Oh, they immediately activate, so I guess the other one activates, moves 1 space, and attacks He-Man. For no melee successes, so He-Man takes no damage. But Triclops gets another activation card. Before taking their first action, character gains 3 energy. He's full. If the character has enough energy to activate their skill, there's an enemy in range. Then he gets to take his Division attack against He-Man. So, 6 die ranged attack against He-Man. And Triclops rolled 4 successes. 4 successful ranged attacks. But He-Man has his deflect ability, so I can use an energy and roll 3 die to see if I can gain any armor against that attack instead of taking all 4 damage. So we'll roll the 3 die, and the rules on that say for each successful melee attack I get 1 armor, and for each Gray Skull I get 1 armor and the attacker suffers 1 wound. So I got 1 melee die and 1 Gray Skull die, meaning I gain 1 armor and only take 3 damage for the melee die, and then I gain 1 armor and only take 2 damage for the Gray Skull die, and Triclops takes 1 damage as well from the reflect, which means Triclops knocked himself out. That's a very Masters of the Universe thing to do. Very He-Man-y. So, yeah, Triclops knocked himself out, and the heroes gain 1 victory point, and we escalate up to level 5. And we all know what that means, right? I'm not even going to read the other option for He-Man because I know what we've all been waiting for. Time to bring in some Battle Cat. So He-Man's level 5 activation skill is Battle Cat. By the way, if anybody's interested, the other option on his red level skill was I Have the Power, which gains 2 energy for that skill every time he activates. And just by spending an action and some energy, all enemies within 2 spaces suffer 2 wounds and become dazed. And he can take a bonus action, but who cares? Battle Cat, right? So for Man-at-Arms, we can select either Onslaught. Each time Man-at-Arms KOs an enemy, skill gains 1 energy, and it's 2 different attack boosts. Or Enhanced Gear, Man-at-Arms may use these boosts on himself or any ally, so they're all armor boosts for him spending any kind of energy. Let's go ahead and use Onslaught. Man-at-Arms should have more attack-oriented skills, I believe. For Teela, she can either have Inspiring, so Royal Guard elite minions within 4 spaces may reroll any attack. When Teela or an ally within 4 spaces reduce 0 HP, roll 2 dice. If you roll any ranged hits, they're not KO'd, but remain conscious with 2 hit points and gain 1 energy. Or Command, free bonus action, 1 Royal Guard elite minion within 4 spaces performs an attack. A bonus action, 1 ally within 4 spaces performs an attack action. And a Surge, roll 1 die and may re-roll any attack dice. Let's go ahead and let's use the Command ability. I like that one for Teela this time around. Yeah, exactly. No argument here, Jackie. If you have a chance to get Battle Cat on the field, you're putting Battle Cat on the field. I mean, He-Man's incomplete without him. And besides, look at that. That thing is just plain fuzzy. Sorry. There you go. Just a beautiful figure. How can you not want that on the battlefield? And for Stratos, his options are Lord of Avion, cannot suffer escape damage, and he gets a move boost. Before moving, heal 1, then all enemies in spaces adjacent take 1 wound from Stratos' jetpack. And he gets a bonus action skill with it, or bomb drop, which may move through enemies. After moving, roll 2 dice against each. Yeah, I don't care. Let's take the Lord of Avion one, because that seems more fitting. Alright, so, where were we? Next character is Stratos. Gains 2 energy from his activation. We'll do 1, 2, 3 move, and we will do his 3-die ranged attack against that hover bot. One success, which is not enough to defeat the hover bot, but does give us 1 energy because it was a Grayskull roll. Next up, we have the strategy phase. So each minion moves 1 toward the closest character, and the one that moved toward Stratos attacks. 2 successes. Stratos has 1 armor now, thanks to his evasive maneuver skill. He could also take a bonus action, but we're just going to take his single damage from that attack. Call it good. So then we got 2 minions next to He-Man. Each one of them will take their attack. First one gained 1 success, but with Battle Cat, he also becomes Battle Armor He-Man, so he's got armor now and takes no damage there. So the second minion attack was 2 successes, and one of those was a Grayskull. So the Grayskull die means he gets to roll 1 additional die, and it was a ranged success. So 2 melee successes, one of them hits armor, the other one He-Man takes 1 damage for. Activation card for this turn says controller pays 5 energy. I do not have 5 energy. Pays 3. Don't have 3. Pays 2. Spawn 1 minion on each spawn point. I do have 2 energy. But again, we go back to the, what the hell's a spawn point? I just don't know what that is. So, oh, you know what? I wonder if the spawn points are the enemy spawn points where the 3 main bad guys started. Maybe those are spawn points. So, assuming that's the case, but again, I don't even have enough minions to spawn those in there. I don't know. Until I get a chance to research it, I'm ignoring that. Let's just do the last action on the card, which says spawn 1 minion adjacent to the player character with the lowest HP and immediately activate. Player character right now with the lowest HP is actually He-Man. So spawn a minion there. Yeah, we're at 7 right now, Slinky, so even if I'd followed those rules, who knows? We'll cross that bridge some other time. But that minion rolled 2 successful ranged attacks. No damage, He-Man's A-OK. And now, He-Man's turn. Get 2 energy for his activation. And we're going to assign that 2 energy to throw, because if we throw this guy and we boost the attack, then he gets to use it as a ranged attack to any any enemy he ends adjacent to. So let's go ahead and spend 1 energy to I'm sorry, 2 energy, 1 to throw and 1 to boost it. So the throw attack is a 3 melee attack. For which I rolled 2 successes, one of which was a Gray Skull success. So we'll throw this enemy here, and even though he's going to be KO'd at the end of this, we get to use him as a minion bowling ball and take a ranged attack against any adjacent enemy that he ends up next to. So I assume that that means all 3 enemies that he's adjacent to. So for each in turn, we will take a 3-die ranged attack. So this minion first, let's see. Nope, 1 range success. So that minion is still okay because he's got armor. This minion next. Whoops. Can I keep that? Yeah, let's keep that. Oh wow, that's the best roll I've ever had. That's 3 Gray Skull die. 3 energy. Hey, I'll take it. And that minion's defeated. And last but not least, a 3-die ranged attack against Skeletor himself. And I got 1 Gray Skull success there. That puts Skeletor down to a single hit point. And that was just the first action. So, yeah. I guess for second action, I'll just have He-Man take his 3-die melee attack against that minion who survived the throw attack. And I rolled 3 melee successes on that one, so that minion is gone. Moving on, it's Evelyn's turn. If there is an enemy in attack range, well, I guess there is an enemy in attack range, but no line of sight. Do we want to say that's line of sight? It actually kind of is, huh? Okay, let's say she's got line of sight on Stratos and perform 1 attack. So Evelyn's going to do her dark magic attack. She's going to spend an energy to boost it, which means for each wound dealt, the enemy loses an energy. So, boosted dark magic attack, which is 4 ranged die. And rolled 1 success on that, but with his yellow skill, Stratos gains an armor, so no damage to Stratos. Alright. And last but not least, it's Teela again. So Teela gains 3 energy from her activation. Alright, so for Teela, let's we'll do 1 move. But then for her second action, let's go ahead and spend an energy for one of her base actions, which allows her to spawn in a Royal Guard Elite. So one of these guys is now going to spawn in adjacent to Tila, which means he activates on her turn. At least that's how I'm reading it. So, one Eternian Guard Elite spawned in. Let's not put him right next to Skeletor so he doesn't get taken out immediately, but yeah. Alright, so end of the round. We are clearing the board. We are spawning Triclops and Duncan back in. Duncan at 6 and Triclops at 7. Put Triclops up here. We'll put Duncan over here in those spawn points. And then we'll set up our controller board and continue on. This is actually a pretty good AI system. I kind of had my doubts about just having randomly generated actions based on cards, but I think it's working out quite well. So pretty cool. I will take it. It'd be maybe nicer, maybe smoother in an app, but still enjoying it in this card form. So no complaints. All right, starting out the turn with Evil In. So let's activate. If there's an enemy in attack range, perform one attack on the enemy in range. This attack rolls maximum attack dice, gains all attack boosts and surges without spending any energy, but the character must suffer 1 wound for each miss. So, Evelyn's going to roll her 4-die dark magic attack against Stratos, automatically gaining the boost of forcing the character to lose an energy, which I guess he should have lost an energy last turn, I forgot. But 1 success, 2 successes, 3 successes against Stratos. So that means Stratos loses 3 energy, which he only has 2. So he takes the third one as damage, and minus 1 armor gets 2 damage plus that, so 1, 2, 3 damage total. And because she missed once, Evil In takes 1 damage. Alright. Moving right along, we have Man-at-Arms. And Man-at-Arms gains 1 energy from his activation. Does he lose that energy when he's KO'd? I don't think they lose the energy they have. They are only temporarily... Yeah, it doesn't say. So I assume that they'll keep any energy that they already had banked when they were KO'd. So, Man-at-Arms. 1, 2, 3. And attack that Hoverbot. For 3 die. 1, 2 successes, one of which was a Gray Skull, which is enough to defeat that Hoverbot. And Skeletor's turn. Skeletor, if character has enough energy, he gains an energy for his activation. To activate their skill and there's an enemy in range, the skill gets used. Skeletor's skill requires 3 energy, which he has, and is Master of Evil. The ally with the most energy performs 1 bonus action. So he spends that to give Triclops a bonus action. That doesn't seem very Skeletor, but we'll do it anyway. Alright, next up we have He-Man. So, for He-Man's turn, here's his 2 energy for activating. And, well, I guess we will move him 1 space and we'll attack Skeletor, but we'll spend 2 energy to use his attack boost, which means instead of 3 melee die, He-Man gets 6 melee die against Skeletor. One, two, three. 3 successes, 2 of which were Grayskull rolls, which KOs Skeletor, which gives the heroes a victory point. And now it's Triclops' turn. Remember, Triclops has a bonus action, so he's going to draw 2 cards. If there's an enemy in attack range, which there's not, so he's going to move 2 spaces. For his second action, if the character has enough energy to activate their skill and there's an enemy in range. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not quite. So move 2 spaces. Unfortunately, Triclops, you only have a range of 4, like everybody else. So next up is Teela. So for Teela's action, we are going to, well, activate her minion, so he can move 1 space. We can, let's see. Okay, well, I guess we'll just move her 1, 2, 3, and use her. Oops, already got die out. Use her 3 melee attack die against Triclops. But before we do, I'm going to spend this energy to flip her defensive stance to an attack stance, which means she rolls 1 extra die. 1 success. And Triclops has 1 armor, so nothing, no joy. Moving on, strategy. So each minion activates. The one that activated and got next to Stratos takes his 2 die melee attack. No successes. Strategy card. Controller pays 5 energy, which we do not have. I forgot to give them an energy when Teela spent it, though. So controller pays 3 energy, which we do have. All player characters become dazed. Move the next player activation card to the last player slot of the track. Well, the next one is in the last spot. They do not gain energy on that activation. Well, that sucks. Everybody's dazed. And Stratos doesn't gain any energy. Oh, well, I guess I have to resolve the second strategy activation too, huh? Controller pays, nope. Got none of those, so all characters, the AI character with the lowest remaining HP heals 2 and gains 2 energy. So Evelyn heals 2, gains 2 energy. And now Stratos activates, gains no energy, and has no energy, so I guess he will make an attack against that hover bot. So 3 melee die attack. 1 success, so that hoverbot's still fine. So we'll attack again for the second action. And 3 successes that time, so that hoverbot's defeated. Gain an energy because, well, you know, a gray skull die. And that's it for the end of this round. Oh. Well, that was dumb. Oh well, lesson learned. We'll deal with that next turn. Don't mind me, I'm babbling. So let's go ahead and reset the controller board. I guess that's technically the activation board. I don't know. Let's see if I can finish this up on this this round. What's everybody think? I need 2 victory points. So I think we can do it. Triclops goes first. Let me shuffle up the character activation a little bit. Triclops is going to, if an enemy is in attack range, perform 1 attack action. So he is going to use 2 energy to boost. His attack boost means he gets to re-roll any die, and he ignores armor, which Tila's already dazed, so whatever. So he got 2 successes, and because of his boost, we'll re-roll that unsuccessful one, but it was still not a success, so he gets 2 successes against Tila, who doesn't benefit from any armor, and loses 2 hit points. And now it's Man-at-Arms' turn, so 1, 2. Oops, we'll give him 1 energy for his activation. And we will spend 2 energy for a bonus action. But his first action will be a 3-die laser rifle attack against Evelyn. Oh, hey, look at that. 3 successes. When do you ever see that from me? So 3 successes means Evelyn is down to 2 hit points. That 2 energy I spent was for a bonus attack for rapid fire, so I'll roll 3 attack die against Evelyn again. Oh yeah, that's more what you expect from me. 3 melee successes, so no hits with that second attack. Moving on, we have Evelyn. If a character has enough energy to activate their skill and there's an enemy in range, then we use her skill, which is Mind Control. 3 energy. Says push the enemy with the least energy 4 spaces toward their closest ally. Then the enemy performs 1 attack action on their ally using the attack that can cause the most wounds. Well, I don't have to push Man-at-Arms because he's already right next to Stratos. And we'll use his normal laser rifle attack against Stratos for 2 successful hits. One of which was a gray skull, but he doesn't get to gain energy. Oh, it doesn't say he can't gain energy, so here you go, Man-at-Arms. Have an energy for that. Stratos has 1 armor, but the other one hits, so he's down to 3 hit points. And Tila's turn. So, for Tila's turn, we're obviously going to attack Triclops. We're still in offensive stance. She gains her 2 energy for activation. Her minion moves 1 space. Okay, so she gets 4 die against Triclops for a melee attack. 1, 2, 3. 3 successes, one of which was a Gray Skull success. So Triclops takes 1, 2 damage because he has a single armor. For her second action, hey Tila, why not go ahead and attack again, right? So 1, 2, 3 successes, one of which is a Gray Skull success. So that's 1, 2 more damage to Triclops to put him down to 3 hit points. And I will use 1 energy to activate Tila's bonus action, which activates Royal Guards within 2 spaces of her. So this guy can move 1 space and attack Triclops with his 3 attack die halberd. So 2 successes from him means 1 damage to Triclops. There's a free bonus action from her command skill that says 1 Royal Guard elite minion within 4 spaces performs an attack action. So that Royal Guard is going to attack again using his 3 melee attack halberd. Ooh, 3 successes on that one. So, that's right, Triclops, you were KO'd by a minion. And I gain a victory point. So we're 1 victory point away from a win this round. So, doing pretty well. Next up is the strategy activation. So minion moves 1 space. This minion attacks Duncan for 2 melee attack die with no successes. Hey, I'm rolling really well for those minions. Alright. Strategy skills. Or, not skills, strategy activation, as it were. Controller pays 5 energy. Nope, not enough energy. 3 energy, 2 energy, no. So otherwise, spawn 1 minion on each spawn point, then spawn 1 minion adjacent to the player character with the lowest remaining HP. So we'll go ahead and spawn 1 minion on each spawn point this time. Now that I think I'm correct in my assumption that these are the spawn points being talked about. Okay. And spawn 1 minion on the space adjacent to the character with the lowest HP, which is Tila right now. Immediately activate him, so he does 2 melee attack die against Tila. For 2 successes, which is going to be enough to KO her. But the Royal Guard has an ability that says reaction ability. When an ally within 2 spaces is attacked, move into the closest adjacent space, then become the target of that attack. So the Royal Guard's going to take that attack for her, and he's KO'd instead of Tila. That was nice of him. How loyal. So, yeah. Second strategy activation. Controller, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, the player character with the lowest remaining HP becomes dazed. Then they suffer a 3 die melee attack. Well, he kept her standing a little longer, but she was KO'd on that one. So, AI gains 1 victory point. Next up, Stratos. So Stratos is going to move. No, he doesn't have to move. He can just use his ranged attack. So a ranged attack of 3 against that hoverbot. 3 successes, one of which was a gray skull. Enough to take out that hoverbot. And he will remove Dazed for his second action. Next up is Skeletor, so he gets to respawn. He should have respawned at the beginning, so we'll spawn him there. Before taking their first action, character gains 3 energy. So Skeletor comes in at max energy if there's an enemy in attack range, which there is not, so move 2 spaces toward the closest enemy. And next is He-Man. So as it should be, He-Man is going to spend 2 energy to get enough movement boost to jump up here with Battle Cat, and for his second action, capture that spot for a victory point, and yay, good has triumphed over evil. That was a solid win. Good game. That was actually a lot of fun. I like that one a lot. There's a ton mechanically to it, but it's not overly complicated, which makes it a whole lot of fun to play. Sometimes the mechanics can just clobber it too much, and even with those pieces of errata that were just not fully explained in the rules, once we just adopted our own resolution to those, they didn't negatively impact gameplay at all. I have few complaints about the game overall, and I'd give it a solid. Did I switch the scale to 10? I don't remember. We talked about half points. I don't remember if I switched the scale to 10 though. But I would give it a solid 9 out of 10 if I did 10-point scale, or if not, 4.5 out of 5 if we're still in the 5-point scale. So, or 45 out of 50 if we're doing a 50-point scale. 90 out of 100 if we're doing a 100-point scale, etc., etc. But yeah, a lot of fun. I would recommend this one. Highly recommend it. Even this solo experience, that implementation of the AI system using the cards is, yeah, worth the price of admission just for the miniatures. Definitely. Those things are so freaking cool. I just cannot rave about them enough. Here, we'll because we didn't look super closely. Here you go, Jackie. Let's go ahead and pull the camera down this time for a nice close look at what's going on with some of the She-Ra. So the She-Ra set has Mermista, Flutterina. I love the detail on even what they're standing on there. Just so well done. She-Ra herself. I gotta turn this so I'm actually looking at it the way it's facing. Uh-oh. Did I lose it? Yeah, crap. turn the camera off because that's what I do. Let's go this way. We'll do it handheld so that I have better control over it. There we go. We're back. So, She-Ra herself. Look at the relief on the shield there. We've got... Okay, so here's where my knowledge of the She-Ra characters starts to falter. I don't know who this one is. I can know who it is. Let's see. We'll open the cards real quick because why not? Alright, so that one is Glimmer. So Glimmer. And then we have Bow. Barely enough detail to see that majestic mustache. But it's there, so gotta love that. And last but not least for princesses, we have... Oh, not last. There's one more. There's Frosta. And then the last princess is Perfuma. With her giant flower. I like her pigtails. They're very large. And then we have the just the normal rebel soldiers as the minions for the She-Ra expansion. And last but not least in this set is She-Ra on Swiftwind, which is super awesome. I like that one quite a bit. But then for contrast, here is the Evil Horde. Let's see what the Evil Horde has to offer. If I can get the box open. Setting the camera down for 1 second. Oh, I hadn't even removed the tape on this one. That's how new it is. I was so enthralled by the She-Ra miniatures that I haven't looked at the Horde miniatures. So we will look at them together. Alright. For the Horde, we have Grizzlor, Catra, what is this one? Castaspella, right? Is that the evil witch? The one that looks straight out of a Bakshi film. Oh, Shadow Weaver. Is Cast... Oh, that's right. Cast a Spell is a good guy? I don't remember. And I'm not as knowledgeable in She-Ra as I am in He-Man, obviously. So let's break out their cards and see who everybody is. Alright, so we've got Mantenna. Looking like a Men in Black character. We've got, Leech. We have Catra, we already saw. Modulok. Unfortunately, not one we can pop apart and reconfigure, but we've got Grizzlor, who we already looked at. Shadow Weaver. And Hordak. With some really cool details on the staff and his little bat creature guy. And much like everybody else has a mount, Hordak also has a Hordak on Manotar figure. So yeah, she does not Slinky. She's just got the regular Catra figure. Only one version. Maybe in one of the Kickstarter sets she did, though. But because that Places of Power set with that came with the Kickstarter stuff has like 25 other characters in it. It's ridiculous. But it's also holy crap expensive, so unfortunately. And then we've got just the elite minions with the spellcaster guy here, and then the non-elite minions with the Hordak troopers. So yeah, the details in the sculpts for this game are absolutely ridiculous. But I think that the play absolutely supports that. So a lot of fun, and I'd recommend it. But if anybody has any questions about the game or the gameplay or anything else to go with it, you all know how to get a hold of me. And for next week, I don't know, what's everybody feeling for next week? I'm thinking we're either going to go Star Wars or Lord of the Rings.